is willing to retrieve Officer Handsome's profile. Surprisingly, there is actually a photo of the cover of a comic book in the file. Greasy Beard tells them it is the origin story of the Batman. This means that whoever killed his parents 20 years ago is probably the same person or the same group as the 3 murder cases they are investigating. Officer Handsome denies such an idea and what he will do next. Pretty analyzes that the murderer must be very rich. The human barbecue equipment all cost a lot of money. She points out that maybe they should begin the search with rich comic book fans. Greasy Beard agrees. Selecting these comics for publication also requires a lot of time. So visit a man to get more information. This guy knows who buys those expensive comic books. The aforementioned collections is a real estate tycoon in Madrid. Greasy Beard wants to be a hero like the comic book, but Officer Handsome sends him home and journeys to Tycoon's house alone. In a gloomy warehouse, he finds many clips of comic books, including the one for Batman, Detective 33. All of a sudden, Officer Handsome spots a man and shoots at him. Little does he know the man is already dead, and his rash actions trigger the toxic gas to leak out. Then a man in a plague doctor mask swoons and eerily congratulates Officer Handsome on finally finding the villain's lair. Unfortunately, Officer Handsome is rendered powerless due to inhaling the toxic gas. Officer Handsome sneers at him and challenges him to identify himself. The guy says he is Professor Novarro. In a pinch, Pretty arrives at the warehouse and shoots the plague doctor mask, rescuing Officer Handsome. The masked man pretends to collapse and soon escapes with a laugh. It turns out that Greasy Beard worries about Officer Handsome's safety and alerts Pretty of Officer Handsome's movement. Officer Handsome is so touched that he almost kisses Pretty's smelly face. Looking around the warehouse, they find 2 more comic books, namely X-Men, Spider-Man, have not appeared in the crime scenes. Both books deal with mutants and nuclear radiation. Greasy Beard infers that the next murder case would have to do either mutants or nuclear radiation. Other than that, they have no idea who the next target is. Coroner confirms that Tycoon died a few years ago, but his corpse was freshly removed from formaldehyde. It shows that the murderer has been committing crimes in the name of Tycoon. More importantly, coroner has detected nuclear radiation from Tycoon's body. Pretty concludes this case would be handed to the National Security Council. Officer Handsome is unwilling to give up, for he is so close to the murderer of his parents. And then, coroner offers that he could extend the deadline by delaying the report submission. He is willing to take the risk, for he also looks forward to making some progress. Everything's set. Officer Handsome is again out for the hunt alone. Pretty decides to join him, but he stops her with a kiss. Officer Handsome explains that he does not want Pretty to stick her neck out for him again. Pretty now totally falls for him, but actually is hormones. That afternoon, another victim is reported on television. A juvenile released from prison was hung from the ceiling of the station in a bizarre way. Officer Handsome can tell that his death takes after the origin story of Spider-Man. Only 1 more day is left, and Officer Handsome becomes frustrated. Greasy Beard is more shrewd to find the connections of all 5 murder cases. 20 years ago, the culprit started with killing Officer Handsome's parents, following the Spider-Man story. And then, the killer restarted the killing until Officer Handsome was transferred to the Madrid police station. Along the way, he has hidden clues for Officer Handsome to investigate. So the psycho must have planned to create a superhero to highlight his supervillain skills. Officer Handsome criticizes Greasy Beard for mixing up the real world with the comic books and storms out of the bookstore. Returning to his car, he realizes what Greasy Beard says might be helpful. In fact, there is nothing much he could do for the present case. Seeking Greasy Beard's help, he attends the 10th year anniversary of the comic book store. Greasy Beard prepares a superhero suit for Officer Handsome and calls him the Triangle Man. Officer Handsome does not like this name for sure, but he humbly asks Greasy Beard what to do next. Greasy Beard predicts that the villain would create an emergency and force him to rescue his loved ones. Immediately after, Pretty rushes into the bookstore with the bad news that Detective has been kidnapped. Seconds later, Officer Handsome receives a call from the plague doctor saying that Detective is now kept in the tower of the reservoir. In line with Greasy Beard's analysis, Plague Doctor tells Officer Handsome to grab this one last chance to become a superhero. Furthermore, he has already slipped radioactive elements into the Comic-Con drinks. If Officer Handsome does not turn up, he is going to dump radioactive elements into the entire city's water supply. While Officer Handsome is still engaged with the phone call, all the participants who have taken the drink collapse down suddenly. Greasy Beard cannot wait to rescue his father, but Officer Handsome and Pretty order him to stay back. Greasy Beard then gives Officer Handsome the SWAT officer suit of his elder brother. Pretty pulls the CEO out from his sports car and deploys it for the mission. In the reservoir, the masked man reveals his agenda of creating the X-Men. Detective is taken as the Professor X. Detective is shocked to realize that the series' murderer is actually their colleague, Coroner. As an antisocial comic book fan, he believes that only a superhero could save this corrupted generation, so he commits himself to make a superhero. He tells Detective that his masterpiece will soon arrive to fight against him, and he will be more than willing to fall before the superhero. Detective condemns him for killing innocent lives, but Coroner insists that all of them are badass deserving of a death sentence. The physics professor dumped chemicals nearby a primary school, causing dozens of lives. The armor maker was a drug dealer. The arsonist escaped punishment by telling lies. The juvenile a ruthless dismemberment maniac. But no one curbs such evildoers. Coroner claims that they definitely need a superhero to purify the world. And then Coroner calmly injects drugs into his face, then dips his face into strong acid to disfigure himself. He proclaims that Heath Ledger is the real saint. Having done that, he puts on the mask and guns down Detective when Officer Handsome arrives. As Officer Handsome puts on the SWAT suit, Detective mistakes him as his eldest son. He gives up his breath in the arms of Officer Handsome. Soon after, Officer Handsome wrestles with Coroner and is soon beaten down. To retaliate, he takes out the electric baton, but Coroner takes over the baton to abuse him. Strangely enough, Coroner has no intention to kill him. Instead, he pretends to slip his foot, smashing the railing and falling